Let's talk about credit. You can't have it. You have to have it.
Yeah.
You can't not have it. At the same time, we hear that there are mistakes that people often do as they go along. What do we talk about, or what are we talking about when we talk about credit? Maybe someone can start with breaking it down in terms of what do we mean when we say credit. Let's just describe that, and then we'll tend to get an understanding of how important it is for one to navigate it responsibly.
Basically, when talking about credit, it's us taking loans. Now, as much as we might not like them, we need to be aware of something, Katleho, is that it does get to a point whereby one does realize that they'd like to purchase a house or a car. So if it does happen that, let's say, growing up, you were not for credit, and by the time you are 28 or you're 30, then you start applying for this, it might catch up to you. So this is something that we need to take into consideration from the early age as 18.
So this is me going to borrow. I don't have, and I want to do something, and then I go borrow, and that's how you start building your profile, because without having to borrow and the patterns of your behaviors, then you're not able to move in terms of having to get even more of that credit. So it's a little bit of a boost in terms of just giving you a spring in terms of what you would want going into the future.
100, Katleho. So how I also look at credit is that credit is like hot water. You could use it for good, you could use it for bad. And it's totally up to you how you actually use that. So I'd like to start it there, that you could use it for good, and at the same time you could be using it for bad.
What is the good and what is the bad? Because one would see it as credit being credit. How do you actually navigate it in a way that you would say you're using it now for the bad, and this time is working for you for the good? Because we hear as well that it can be a powerful tool to help you move and navigate this economy.
Yeah, I love that question, Katleho, because now when you're looking at the good side, we basically use credit to make more money, right? So if I'm going to be taking out credit, I need to know that the money is actually going to be coming back with interest. Now, a lot of people would say that it's using other people's money, but at the end of the day, I'm basically saying that I'm borrowing 10 Rand from Neo to make 15 Rand, and then I'm going to give Neo his 10 Rand plus an additional 1 Rand in order for it to make sense for him, and also for it to also make sense from my side. Now, when it comes bad is when we use credit for essentials, so things like groceries and stuff like that. The moment I buy groceries with my credit card, I'm actually putting myself at a back foot, because now month end basically means that I'm minus how much I'm actually going to be getting paid. So say, for instance, if I get paid 17,000 on a monthly basis, I've used 500. That means on that particular month, I'm not getting 17,000. I'm actually getting 16,000. And from there, it then becomes a slippery slope where you're just saying that, no, we still have credit, let's use credit. So from that perspective, it's then the bad side of using credit.
So it's basically a matter of how you use it or how you make it work for you, and your decision around how you navigate it can either help you in staying in the game or pull you back in terms of you now having to even pay more because you were not taking it to invest in a way, because one would say that you are approaching it as someone that is an investor, right? You know very well that you're taking this credit so you can build something that will make you money, and then you come back and you return that money. But it may be, for someone else, it may be a different thing, because maybe for them it will be taking a credit to buy a phone or to buy something that, maybe to them at that point in time is an essential, but the money is not going to come back. You're not taking this credit to basically build wealth around it. So it becomes way trickier in that sense. Would you say that then all of us should approach credit, if we are to look for the good, in a sense of making sure that there is somewhat of a return to what we're taking?
100%. My favorite word, man, is what is the return on investment, man? Because every time, actually, it even gets worse when even going out, a question that I ask myself, what is the return on investment on that? So as much as a lot of us would be even excited about new business, and I'm keen on taking that credit, but if I don't understand the return on investment, I'm putting myself in a situation. And what I like about credit is that even when you're looking at it from a bigger scale, you're looking at it from the bank of banks. It's borrowing our banks at a percentage of interest. Our banks are borrowing us at a percentage of interest. But now, as soon as I'm going into business, that emotion takes care of me. It actually takes the best of me, whereby I've always wanted to buy so many trucks, and now I don't consider what is the return on investment. So definitely we need to understand that before we invest in anything.
Awesome. Just a reminder to our listeners at home that we have Lebo and Neo. They're here in studio. They're Nong Brothers, the dynamic duos. They're here just basically helping us break down this credit. And if you have a question, if you're one person that you've always, navigated this in the negative and you'd like to come back to health, a clean bill of health where your finances are concerned, you're welcome to touch base. We won't judge you. We all find ourselves navigating this thing. So life so tricky, but yeah, let's share those stories. But again, I'd like to hear from you guys in terms of a credit score. What is a credit score? How does it work? And do we start from zero, or is there somewhere where we start? Let's say, like you had Nell here saying you can't then start thinking credit when you are in your 30s. Maybe start building your profile, your portfolio, as a young person, maybe even university and the likes, but how does the credit score work? And how does it, can it remain like that for years to come in terms of how you maintain it? Can it also go to a zero, or do you start at a zero? How do you find yourself actually navigating this credit as per this credit score?
Yeah. So when we're looking at credit score, right? Credit score just basically tells a credit provider how much you are, or how good of a payer are you. So, for instance, if you're looking at a situation whereby Neo has actually taken out credit, is he making his payments on a monthly basis and on time? Right? So now that's where the credit score actually comes in. So now the credit score will then tell the credit provider that no, Neo is a good payer or Neo is not a good payer. So now if Neo is not a good payer, then they have a score that is up to 700 and something. I'm not quite sure of what the correct number is, but it's up to 700. So now, if you're looking at a good credit score, you're looking at something at around 650, 660, 690, and so on. So now, looking at a bad credit score, and also, is there such thing as starting at zero? Yeah. I've never seen a credit score that is at zero, right? Is at zero, but I've seen someone actually getting like a 400. So now 400, you're actually on the red. So now this basically means that you have a lot of skipped payments that you've actually done. You are not actually communicating anything with your credit providers, because remember, when you are given credit, it also comes back to the bank or to the credit provider that you need to be the one that communicates with them and tells them that, okay, can we have some sort of an arrangement that we can actually do to make our monthly payments?
So your behavior, I guess, is what informs where you would play at in terms of your credit score. Can one say that you are extremely favorable in a way that maybe it has hit the 700s and we don't even need to ask a question about you? Wherever you go, you are welcomed. People look at you and they're like, hey, this is a person of interest and the likes. Can it really get there? Or, life happens. You find yourself here and there to a point whereby, you would hover around Buma 650, but for you to get to 700 or even 750, or even think of, yourself beyond the 700 becomes something else. Is that possible? Or has there been a situation, maybe as you go along and helping people to create this wealth, you bumped into someone that would be in their 700s, or you reckon, this is just a little bit too good to be true?
It does get there. I was once there, man, especially when we started our journey. Whereby
emphasis on the
then what
there.
happened? to come there to say what happened. I've underlined that, but yeah, you can go ahead now.
The deeper you go into business is the more you realize that not every year will be a good year.
Wow.
So the first application that I made, that's where I was there, man. And I remember what happened is that it got so good whereby the bank was even saying that, you know what, we'll even give you money to pay off your transferring costs. So it wasn't just the loan, it was also to cover the costs. But now we need to be careful again. As Lebo did mention, it's a double-edged sword in a sense whereby if I'm in that position and I just take that money to pay the transferring attorneys, yes, I didn't use any of my money. But ultimately what this means is that I'll be paying more from month to month. And the interest will be more. So ultimately, that's the good side. Let's look at it on the other side. The other side is that, yes, someone can apply with a 500 score. But then what that means is that they will be paying plus prime. So prime, we're basically saying right around South Africa, let's just say that it's at about 10% the interest of credit that people are paying, right? But now if you're paying with a lower credit scores, yes, you do have access to that property, but then you find yourself paying Boma 2,000 extra. So that's why I'm saying that we really need to understand how do we navigate around this.
Yeah. Can I just add on what Noah was saying?
Yeah.
Right? We have clients that say that, guys, I have a good credit score, but the bank declined me. So I need to emphasize this, that your credit score is not the only thing that will determine if the bank will actually approve or not. So you could have a good credit score, but you don't have the affordability to buying that house or that car that you want to buy. So now your credit score is accompanied by your affordability. So say for instance, if you're earning like 25,000, you're probably going to be qualifying for a property that's worth around 700,000. So now with 700,000, if you are coming through and saying that I have a good credit score, the too good to be true 710, but now the problem is that your affordability only says 700,000, but you want to buy a property that's worth 1 million. Then you are at a back foot because you do not have the affordability. So the bank can only offer you the 700,000, which you afford.
Yeah, that's something else. And in terms of, how people then find themselves running away now from the service providers and the likes, you're avoiding those calls, that would be something somewhat of a bad thing to do because it then says to the person, the service provider, that you are a person that is not trustworthy. How do people find themselves there, and how can you actually get back to a clean bill of health, even when you are faced with this mammoth of a challenge, whereby you are active in the economy, you lose your job, but you still have these credits that are still hanging around you, and you don't have any income anymore as you had income in the past to help you here. This becomes a reality for a lot of people that are drowning in debt. How do you actually, in any way keep up with your obligations like you were working, and at the same time just try by all means not to affect your credit score because you now find yourself in an unfortunate situation?
Yeah. I'd say the first thing is to acknowledge the situation before it even gets there. Once you start missing a payment or two, because as you can see that maybe financially you can realize that you might have bitten off more than you could chew, sell the property. As much as, yes, it's a very sentimental thing, we're close to it, or the car, but if you do get that opportunity, try to sell it. And what the banks also do, they also assist in terms of if you are to sell your property. So they do have that option. So I'll say that's the best thing. And take those calls, man, and explain to them that I cannot afford. But another thing that I also like to stress about is that if you are to be getting into other contracts like debt consolidation and also other things, understand the T's and C's before you sign there, because sometimes people find themselves in a situation whereby they didn't truly understand the way out. They thought they were signing into something that would help them, but they didn't really understand the T's and C's.
And let's go there to that debt consolidation. How does it work? Because a lot of people, it's just easier for your number to be populated, so you get all of these people just calling you and the likes. So there would be those that would call you to say, listen, you have not been, in any way taking calls and the likes, but we are coming through as your saviors here. How does debt consolidation work? Because we hear people saying that it more or less leaves you compromised than it helps you in the long run. How does it work? Does that, more or or less come at your cost in the long run, in the future, or this is an avenue that you can advise one to explore, looking at the fact that it has been able to help people manage their debts?
Yeah. So from my side, it's a numbers game in a sense whereby what is the contract saying? Because remember, with different companies, they offer different things. Now, if I'm to be consolidating all of them only to find out that the interest is more and the years are longer, then now there's a question mark again. Hence, I'm saying that this is a numbers game. You really need to understand how much are you being charged on interest with each and every loan that you're taking. And you need to understand also the term that you're paying, so that whatever decision that you're taking, so I'm not saying it's wrong or right, I'm just saying that it's again a numbers game, that okay, I can see that this will work for me, but then if I'm calculating and I see that the percentage is more, then the question would then be, but is it really worth it or not?
Does it say, though, to those that would be lenders, when they see you having moved into a consolidation space, that you are a risky person to go with? Does that say to you that maybe it's better if you go about it alone and try by all means to be honest as you can, and try get out of this situation that you find yourself in, compared to you consolidating, because automatically to someone that is viewing you, you are a person that is basically in the negative?
Yeah, so it does, because remember, anytime you go and take credit, they do ask you that, have you been under debt review? So now that question does actually show that there is some sort of red flag that is actually given to someone that is actually under that process. But now what I would also say is that what Neo actually said, look at the numbers, look at the loan period that you have, right? Because we had another client that was saying that they were about to finish their credit card, right? And now what happened is that they could not anymore. So now the debt collection actually came in, but now they stretched the loan period. So now instead of them finishing it within 1 hour, 1 year, 7 months, now the loan period was actually stretched now to 5 years. So now the question is that, is it really worth it at that particular point in time?
Let's talk about default. Let's talk about the judgment that would be leveled at you, and how maybe probably you can get out of this and get back to a clean bill of health. Is it possible for one to, when you are blacklisted, for instance, to get back, and do we even have times or terms that maybe can help you to say maybe you need 5 years? After 5 years, you basically would come back to a clean bill of health. Can one actually come back from that?
Yeah. One can come back, but as we did mention, it's taking those calls, because when you're looking at the banks, they're not in the business of repossessing houses, if we are being honest. Because I've also been in that situation whereby it was a bit tricky. Now, it even happened whereby with my situation, they were like, you know what, because you've been paying so good for the past 2 years, what we will do, because I think I was back for 1 month, what happened is that we divided that the bond was 8,000. So what we did, because I saw that I didn't pay last month and I couldn't because something at home happened. So what they then did is that they took that 8,000 and just put it back into the loan. I was really fortunate at that point in time. And the other time, I remember the second time it did happen, they just divided the 8,000 by 2,000. So renting, in the next 4 months, I just took the 8,000 and we said I'll be paying the extra 2,000. So there I was able to look at my budget and say that I'll be paying 10,000 until Giesquasha. But now the problem is that if I don't take those calls and I don't negotiate with the bank and I don't pay them, I'm going to get to a situation whereby I'm owing 80,000, and now it will be really difficult for me to then catch up. So taking those calls and making those arrangements is very important.
What happens to the prescription? Because we hear that there is a moment where the debt prescribes and you are not eligible to pay it. Maybe give us a sense of how that works and how does that play in terms of your credit score, or even what happens on your report as well. Do some of these credits still show when it is prescribed? Or, I don't know, you have to still close, I don't know how, or you're one person that is unknown at that point in time because we've not been able to get in touch with you and the likes. How does the debt prescribe? How does that come about?
So when you're looking at your debt, right, I think the first thing that we need to know is that once I don't make any payments, it does get flagged on my credit score, right? Now, when it gets flagged on my credit score, the question is that is there a way to salvage the relationship between yourself and the credit provider, right? So say for instance, if I'm taking out a credit card with a bank, now if I don't make a payment on a particular month, that will be flagged on my credit score. But now to save the relationship between myself and the bank, then would be me actually making arrangements with the bank and then sticking to those arrangements. Now it does happen that you've lost your job and you don't have any income that you are actually getting. What is important is for you to actually go back and tell the bank that I've lost my job and I'm not able to make any payments. Now, that would then be a conversation between yourself and the bank. So sometimes I remember with me, there was a point in time when the business wasn't actually doing well, and I actually asked the bank to skip for 2 months. It did actually affect my credit score on one side, but the relationship between myself and the bank was actually kept. Now, looking at how long that actually stays on your credit record, that could go for as far as 5 years on your credit record. So now they can actually pick up 5 years ago that I didn't make a payment on this particular day. So making those payments is really important, but sometimes you are in a situation whereby you can't actually make payments.
And how important is closing it? Let's say you have a credit, for instance, with a credit provider. Do you just, when the terms are done, go on with your life? Or do you, the onus is on you to go back to the credit provider to say, listen, we are cutting ties. I'm done. If you have to serve me with a letter, a paid up letter, please do so that I don't find myself years later with someone calling me to say, you owe this bank. And you're like, what is this? How important is that step?
Katla, closing it, right? Especially noting that I was maybe in trouble, so now I'm sorted, so I don't want anything to do with it again. Now, my question comes back is that after 3 years or 5 years, will you want to buy a house, and do you have cash? So if I don't have cash again and I closed it, it's going to catch up with me again via credit score, as we did mention that you might find out that it was low. So it's going to catch up again. So ultimately, it's that thing of just trying to be responsible as possible, because unfortunately, we're coming from those backgrounds whereby we can't buy those Ferraris cash, but we'll get there one day. Right?
One day is one day. How do we know who's who as well? Because a lot of people, in terms of credit, they find themselves in the receiving end because they don't understand the interest, how it works. They don't understand as well who is who in this space in terms of, those that would be eligible service providers as per credit. What can you advise one to look out for? Would you say it's always better if you go to a bank because the reputation would be intact compared to you seeing a corner office saying Katlego loans, and then you want to walk in and come get a loan? How can you caution us around that one?
Okay, so firstly, you need to understand if that service provider is actually registered with the National Credit Regulator, right? Then once you've done that, you need to understand what are the interest rates that are given to you. Now, if you understand the interest rates and you also understand if they are regulated, then you know that you are on a good track.
That's nice. Yeah. So it's always the onus on you to ensure that this person that you are, or maybe you can go onto the NCR website, right?
Yes.
They will be listed there.
Yes.
Those service providers that will be eligible.
100%.
I want us to wrap it up with the scams, because you guys, offside told me that you're almost scammed. And earlier on we spoke about the numbers. People would call you randomly. Like, I don't have to share my number now. My number is out there because randomly you just get a call from a telemarketer or someone that would say to you that you've won something and the likes. As much as you find ourselves vulnerable around the fact that we are taking this credit and we should answer those calls and we should be as honest as we can about where we find ourselves, there are still those chances that will come through and they'll try to offer us or A, B, and Z. Others would even try to get information out of us so they can scam us. How do we actually, navigate this one as people that would want to be active in the economy at the same time, do it with our eyes open? What happened to you guys? You're almost scammed.
We almost got scammed last week. We almost got scammed last week, and this is the second time it happening in the past 2 years, right?
What?
So the last week one, what happened is that, the thing is, when you're using, it's actually linked to our topic right now, whereby we're talking about credit. When you use banks, you need to understand something is that banks send out, when you're applying for a home loan and you like that property and you've signed the offer to purchase, right? They'll send out their bank, their valuer, to make sure they do due diligence. Now, when you're buying cash, it becomes risky because now you are releasing the funds based on the offer to purchase and what you saw. So now what happened is that because this route was more of cash, we saw the property. However, now the agent was not registered, number one. And number two, so we were able to note that at least because we did take their name and their surname and then we checked them out. Number two, the lease agreement, we sent it to our lawyer and we said, can you please have a look at that? And question marks were raised. Number three, we asked who is the owner of the property and they gave us a name. However, now we checked through Lightstone report that who is the owner and we found out that that's not the person. So now what happened is that we did view the property with that person. The next step was that they were pressurizing us to say, guys, put in the funds today before somebody else takes that. And the funds were going to go to that person and not a property lawyer. So yeah, we got away because of the Expelio and the H. If it wasn't for that.
So there's something I wanted to ask you, but it's going to take time, and we'll ask you some other time because there's a situation in my complex where it's a little bit of a tricky one because I don't know. We'll talk about it. But this person was owing rates. And then they've disappeared now. They sold the place through the lawyer.
Yeah.
And then the agreement was that the money was supposed to pay at least the rates, the purchase money. A portion of it will go to settling the rates, right? But that did not happen. And now it's a little bit of a situation as to, do we go after the lawyer who was, dealing with this matter, or do we go after the owner who sold this property, who is nowhere to be found? It's a bit of a tricky one because there's this debt now and there's a body corporate situation. And now everyone is just looking at each other as to who shoulders this credit, this debt, the lawyers involved. And I want to talk about it, like the dynamics around different living, like communal living, but body corporate, how it works, you stand alone, and all of these implications that would go with you actually purchasing or even selling this property when that time comes. So please come back. It's already a date. So come back and let's talk about it. I'll get the clear story.
Can I answer in 30 seconds, right? So basically, it's the lawyer's fault. Because remember, the money goes to the lawyer and the lawyer is responsible to pay everybody before they pay the owner. So the lawyer was supposed to pay all of the rates and levies before they give the money to the owner. So the problem here is with the lawyer. We can go.
So the lawyer can't go on to say that I've sent the money to the owner. The responsibility was to ensure that they do due diligence in terms of this money that's supposed to be split.
Yes.
Guys, I would want to go into it further, but please, we're out of time. Our next guest is already here. I would really appreciate you coming through, giving us your time. How do we connect with you guys for those that don't know you?
On all social media platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok @Nongwalter.
Awesome. Guys, enjoy the rest of your day. Let's touch base soon.